Okay, here we are changing from inequality to interval notation. So right now, all three of these problems are in inequality notation. And the easiest thing for me is to visualize it. Okay, I think you should graph these every time because it's easier to see. So if we were to graph x is greater than or equal to 4, if I have 0 here, 4 here, we know that's a closed circle shaded to the right. So now that we have this graphed, it's going to be easier to write our interval. So our interval, we always look from left to right, and it's going to be something, comma, something. So right now, nothing exists over here. Okay, so we actually started shading at 4, didn't we? So we started at 4, and then we went on and on and on. We're going forever, all the way to infinity. Okay, so now we have to decide between parentheses and brackets. Okay, so let's take a couple notes. Brackets are used for closed circles, and parentheses are used for open circles or infinities. Okay, so here the 4, since it's a closed circle, we're going to put a bracket, and then next to an infinity we always put a parenthesis. So there is our interval for x is greater than or equal to 4. Now number 2, we have an and compound inequality. So let's graph this first. So I have -3, 0, and 10. And we know we shade in between. This looks like a closed circle because of the equal to. This one's an open, and we shade in between. So now our interval, we actually start shading at -3. We end at 10. Now around the -3 is a closed circle, so we're going to use brackets. And then the 10 is an open circle, so we use parentheses. Number 3, let's graph this because, again, it's easy to visualize this. An or, we know we're going to shade away, so x is less than 0 and x is greater than 30. So this one's going to have 2 pieces. So this is an or, okay, union symbol. You can just write or if you want to. So let's start on the left. It's actually going to the left forever. It's going towards negative infinity. So that's where we're starting. We're starting at negative infinity, and we stop shading at 0. And then we start back. We take a little break here, right? And we start back at 30, and we go on again to infinity. Okay, and so let's go back to the negative infinity to 0 interval. Since it's a negative infinity, we put parentheses, and a 0 is an open circle, so we also put parentheses. The 30 is an open circle, so it has a parentheses, and the infinity also has a parenthesis. So this one had 2 pieces because it had 2 pieces on a graph. Now if we want to go now from interval to inequality notation, again, it's sometimes easiest just to graph it first. So here it's telling you it's shaded from negative infinity all the way to 2. So 0, 2. And at the 2, it's a parenthesis, which means open circle. So I'm going to put an open circle, and it's telling me to go all the way to negative infinity. Okay, now that we have this, there's 2 inequalities you can write. You can tell that it's x is less than 2 because it's everything less than 2. Or some people might write that it's going from negative infinity is less than x is less than 2. Either one of those are correct. All right, number 2, since we're going from a number to a number, this is actually going to be an and compound inequality. So we're starting at -6, and we're going to -3. Now, since they're both brackets, they're both going to be closed circles. So I have a closed circle at -6, I have a closed circle at 3, and it's telling us it's shaded from -6 to -3. So all of this are our solutions here. So our inequality notation, since this is an and, I know my x is in the middle. And remember, with ands, it always uses less thans, because technically this is x is greater than or equal to -6, and x is less than or equal to -3. So the less than or equal to -3 goes here, and we flip this one around. So -6 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to -3, because it's going from -6 to -3. And then number 3, we have an or, because it says the word or. So I'm going to graph it. I know this one goes to infinity, sorry, negative infinity. And since it's a parenthesis, it's an open circle. And then we take a little break, and then it starts back at -2. And this one's a closed circle because it has a bracket, and we shade to infinity. Okay, so since this is two pieces, you're also going to have two inequalities. You can write x is less than -5, or x is greater than or equal to -2.